I can start with one pretty quick one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, you can go.
I believe that it was 1966 when they did some sort of act, transportation act, that regulates everything that a vehicle needs to have to keep us safe. Are you aware of any act, or how can the university lobby for specific acts that regulate the machine labor interaction?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking about OSHA. It's if you Google self-propelled autonomous farm equipment, you'll find it right away. I think it's like directive number 8 or something like that. And so that's kind of what I was talking about when I said we operate within that framework. So it's a regulation that came out in 2015. So it kind of feels outdated to me, and it's maybe a big statement, but I do think like this, we don't have the resources or the time to be like lobbying for this to change. And the only way to go around that is to apply for an exemption, which is time limited and again, don't have the time or the resources to invest in that. So what we provide is more than autonomous driving. So we just focus on having a human operator and we bear the cost of that. But, what I was talking about was distance between operator and machine, and I don't want to review about the number of e-stops button and the capacity that the operator should have to like bring the equipment or stop the equipment at all time. But when it comes to ground speed limitation, it feels very inadequate or outdated. It looks like, we need to do a better job at educating the people who made the law. And it takes time and it takes money, which, we choose to put our money into something else. But this is a good use case maybe for using it.
If you remind us, what is the speed? What is the speed right now?
2 or 2.2 miles per hour.
That's super slow,
It is very slow, yeah.
huh? That's one thing you would like to change?
And distance between operator and machine.
What is the distance, the current distance right now?
10 feet. So, when you think about autonomy of equipment, you're not regulating for autonomous farm equipment if you ask 10 feet between the operator and the machine at all time. And again, that you can go around that by applying for an exemption and proving then that you're making the equipment ultra safe. And there are other companies in this space who have done that. I think there are also startups right now coming together to try to address that issue. But yeah, in the future, you could imagine one operator supervising 2 machines, working on 2 beds that are side by side. How is that different than having one operator working on 1 machine? And then ultimately, we'd love to use persons that maybe sit in their truck and, looking at the remote control through the tablet and do that. But it is today not possible.
Thank you.
How fast can you go?
No, I don't think there is any regulation for that. So it doesn't mean that we triple the speed or anything, right? Like we have people walking behind the machine, so we want to make it, bearable for them. But yeah, Yuma doesn't have this kind of issues.
The question, how difficult for you is to convince or have the growers on board with regulators? Well, I'm talking specifically about California. Are they supporting this initiative?
Yeah, so today we work with 30 different farms, and so what I was trying to convey in my little speech is that, maybe 3 years ago, the reception was a bit different. I mean, when we came in the space, I think people were pretty excited because it's new, it's AI, and it's hyping. And then, when we started working with pilot customers, so it's a little more involving on their side than just a customer to provider relationship. I think we've seen people being sometimes frustrated by the machine not removing as many weeds as they wished, but that has changed. And what I was trying to convey is that farm labor shortages impact a lot of these reactions. And then people are very excited. And I think we've seen customers adopting the technology because they are innovative, forward thinkers, who want to invest in the future because they are very aware that labor is going to be harder and harder to find. And so that's one type of customers. And now we're seeing very conservative people coming on board. And so that shows you, like, we've had, I don't want to name anybody, but we have wrenches who have said no to us several times and are now, on board. So it's really cool to see that. And again, like, I don't think we present ourselves as like a hype cool startup. We absolutely do not want to have that image. We are an agricultural service provider, and we offer the reliability and quality of service that any of provider you're working with or contractors you're working with, will provide. So, like, again, Wilbur Ellis or, whatever harvesting companies you're working with, like, we want to be at that level. So we're like trying to remove that nail polish of the Silicon Valley etiquette because it's not serving us really. So long answer to your question, but people are very, very excited.
Very good, thank you. Also, the last one, for example, are you a business with a grower? Are you providing the technical service at the beginning to have a person there doing weeks or months?
Yeah, so today we operate as a service provider, so we do all of that internally. So it's our people coming to your field doing the work and our technicians servicing the machine. So we're not asking the grower to do anything. Now in the future, we also want to be able to sell equipment, so that will change. And so there will be definitely hands-on training for their own staff.
Thank you.
So sorry to backtrack, but I think that you wanted to give us some input regarding that first question, and I want to respect everybody's opinion in the panel there. And just as a reminder, we were talking about OSHA and the regulations. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I think my only, just quick thought on that is, I think the point about educating regulators is so important because they're sitting in offices somewhere, if we're talking about OSHA, they're in Sacramento, they're usually urbanites, they don't understand what it looks like in the field. And I think oftentimes they think there's people around and they don't realize, and I've seen this happen with other regulations like hand washing and where you place your hand wash station for food safety. They think people will see, are out there seeing the tractor driver wash his hands or whatever. There's nobody, for miles and miles, nobody is around. So I think it's definitely the same in a weeding and thinning operation. You're in a field where there's nobody,
Yeah.
except for those operators. So that, and then the question too about working with growers, I think there's a couple kinds of growers, right? You've got your innovative growers where your first adopters who really want to get in, help, make that equipment work. And then you've got a lot of growers that sit back and wait and watch, but they're watching, and if it's successful, then they're on it too, you can prove it. So there's a couple different kinds of thought processes.
Great, for example, very hard to convince growers.
Mm.
We're seeing right now, and we started last year to test a technology named Burro. I don't know how,
Oh, yeah.
For grapes, it's basically very similar concept that you show in the strawberry, the little cart. But it was really hard to convince some growers, but right now we're seeing some success with some of them.
And then it'll start to snowball.
Exactly, yeah.
I want one of those burrows for my yard. Follow me around.
Anybody else after these two questions from the panel?
I think it's covered.
Okay, I have, some questions. This question is for Fadia specifically, or, you can, answer the question too. You showed some of these tools like, interventions and, for example, different interventions that, UCANR developed during these years and how widespread they are, how farmers apply them.
Yeah,
And do you have any success stories related to them for us?
yeah, I kind of mentioned that it varies, honestly. I think the development of it wasn't to make a commercial products, it's just to kind of make people aware that these interventions exist. And then the adoption is varied. Like in the case of the tub, for example, the grape tub, this became now the standard in at least Napa and Sonoma Valley. Those smaller tubs now becoming almost 90%, I think, of the tubs. It used to be exclusively the larger tubs. Now you barely see the larger tubs. So that's kind of a success story. And then there's a group in Napa actually that followed up and found how many of these are used, and that they're the ones we didn't even do it. It's kind of interesting that other people kind of looked at it because they were interested in seeing how many of those. So that's been a success story. And then the other one is probably the nursery propagation, the plant cover. That's definitely, when you bring people back from disability, it's gratifying. And anybody could build this thing, not necessarily us per se. So it wasn't a profit. It was not a profit. And there's no patent on it like we're trying to kind of patent because it's all Lions supported. So the federal government supported us to kind of develop these tools. And then, of course, on the other side, there are certain things that like the tools that provide you from, prevent you from stooping. Unfortunately, that one manufacturer did it, but they don't make them anymore because they were charging, I think, $80. So it was just too much. And that's why they never took off. It should have been $15, right? So that could have been a success story, but it's kind of died out on the financial side, right? Not because it doesn't work. That's where we are, at least. There's some that sitting on the shelf, of course, because they're kind of trial and error, right? Follow?
I have, a quick question for the whole, committee. And it's like, we show different technologies, new technologies, and the cost of the technology is one of the most important issues that, farmers don't like. The current technology is not that much expensive. They prefer to stick to them rather than going to very expensive machineries or robots and other stuff. How do you see this issue, and what are the possible solutions for this issue? You want to
I
start?
think, I think Pauline pretty much addressed it when we talked about how the human growers are responding a little differently. I think there's just this tipping point, right, where people become either so expensive or there's not enough of them that things get tipped over. And I think, with the weeding and thinning was, and I don't want to say low-hanging fruit because it's pretty amazing, but in some sense, it'd be, like you said, easier than harvesting, right? Because it is a little like a technology where it's adaptable to so many different crops. But what I heard from the industry was like, this is great because then it relieves those crews, those people who used to do weeding and thinning can now move into the harvesting world, right? So you're just shifting people into a new role, which is great because maybe you can fill up your machines, but that's only going to last for so long before those people start to either find different jobs or age out or whatever that is. And we can see, I think I was at the Western Growers event that was at Hartwell a few weeks ago or so. And somebody had made that comment, that agriculture has this perception problem that people don't want to work in ag. But there's also the reality problem is that when you drive up and down the valley, what do you see? You see people stooped over doing really hard work. And so it's not attractive. So we got to fix that. We got to fix it more interesting, safer, better jobs. Yeah, and that's going to take technology, but it's going to take this tipping point.
And the growers want their return.
Right. And if people still are moving faster and they still see them as more economical than investing in the $1 million piece of equipment or whatever it is, they'll stay with the people until it doesn't pencil out anymore.
Yeah, so I fully agree. I think it's our responsibility as technology provider to price those machines and those, robots or whatever piece of sophisticated technology you're bringing out there at the right price and make sure that, you know, it depends. First of all, I think it really depends who you are and how you're entering the market. I think we chose to enter the market as a service provider, and that allowed us to really come in with a competitive price or a price at which growers were ready to adopt. While at the same time, we're bearing most of the risks. So we're bringing to market a machine that's not perfect and that's not ready to be sold, but it is okay to be kind of operating it as a person who's like taking care of it, fixing the bugs and not asking anybody to take responsibility for it. But that also means that we are capitalized in a certain way that allows us to do that. Like we're again funded by, you know, venture capital firms, and so we have the capacity to do that. Now, I don't think a traditional OEM, smaller, like, you know, manufacturer or smaller company who doesn't have that kind of capital structure is necessarily best positioned to do that. So it is really tricky. But one thing that we should keep in mind is that the stuff that we do today couldn't have been done 10 years ago, that a lot has changed technology-wise for us to be able to do what we do, whether it's on the hardware side, like the cost of product prototyping has gone down drastically with stuff like laser cutters, and so it makes it easier for companies like us or others to be making those technologies available, and then the cost of compute has drastically gone down. So yes, now we can have machines like capturing thousands of images per acre and in real time making a judgment call on that. And so that is really unique and was not the case, you know, 10 years ago. So the cost of bringing those technologies to market is going down, and as the market consolidates, and 5 years ago there were, you know, maybe blower technology in the weeding space, and then we came up, and now there are tons of companies, like few 10 conferences regularly, like we get tired of seeing new companies entering the space, but it is what's happening. You know, it's going to consolidate, and then you're not going to have one automated weeder, you're going to have 10 automated weeders, and we're all going to compete on price because technology is going to become a commodity, just like autonomous driving will become a commodity maybe 35 years from now, you know? So all of that is going to help the growers implement that for cheaper. Now, you know, there's a bit of time needed until we get to that maturity.
Does anyone has any question or?
Of course. Yes.
So I think it's really good to see how technology has advanced and how it's improving life in the world. My question is, with the improvement and with making production much easier, faster, and with great quantity, how does that reflect to the consumer price-wise for the commodities that are being produced? How does the price affect them?
Anyone? I mean, my answer is I don't really know. Yeah. I mean, I don't really know. The hard part about the crops that I'm used to, leafy greens, broccoli, cauliflower, celery, all those things were grown in Salinas Valley and then Newman, the winter. We don't get to set the price. You know, the grower definitely doesn't set a price. Even the shipper doesn't really set the price. The grocery store chains are setting the price. So, and then it all sort of trickles back down, and hopefully there's something left to a return back to the farm. So in a lot of cases, that's why we see the more vertically integrated companies are more successful. So which kind of squeezes out small growers. But to be successful in that space, you need to be your own shipper, your own harvest company, your own grower, and have all three of those vertically integrated so that you can have a little bit of influence with who the customers you're choosing and the prices you're getting, so that you can trickle down and return some back to the farm to invest in things like better irrigation technology, better fertilizer technology, invest in new factory employees to get them educated so they understand how to use that irrigation technology. So it's challenging. It is the grocery stores, the Costco's, the Walmarts, the Cisco's, that are all setting those prices. It is such a supply and demand. If we have less supply, the prices are great. If we have a lot of supply, the prices tank. It's the classic supply and demand.
The reason I'm asking that question is that we all talk about people not eating healthy. It's around the world how many people are sick, how many people are not eating their vegetables, their fruits, and so on. But the problem is that over time, the price for produce has increased. But you look at the people, the consumers, whatever they take from their jobs or whatever they have is not enough to afford the prices that are set for them to eat healthy. So, and that's maybe why we have a lot of produce being just thrown to waste, because people can't afford them. And then when they can't afford them, the limited money they have, they go to McDonald's and eat whatever they can afford. And then we blame them for not eating healthy.
Yeah.
I think there is something that needs to be changed because then the government spends more money to heal these people for their medication and so on, but at the same time, you are not making life easier for them to be able to afford what you are producing. So really, how does all this technology, all this advancement, how does it help the poor?
That's a great question. Do not have the answer for that. I mean, anecdotally, I had someone, I don't eat meat, I don't eat dairy, and I had someone say to me and I always make my own food, and I was on an inspection, I had an auditor with me, he said, that must be very expensive the way that you eat. And he said, I'm not on any medication, right? Like I don't go to the doctor, how expensive is your blood pressure medicine, and this person happens to be diabetic, I think, I don't know if some of that's education, but you're right, there's access issues. People don't have access to fresh food that if they do, they don't know how to prepare it. So there's a lot of education, I think, that needs to happen too in that space. There's a group called Brighter Bites that I think is doing phenomenal work in getting produce to poorer areas through the school system. And as they do that, they're engaging the parents, they're providing cooking demonstrations, all this fresh produce. It's pretty neat. They're seeing this change in the culture in the areas around eating fresh produce. But that has nothing to do with the technology, that we're talking about now. I don't have an answer for that. Good question.
I don't think it's really the technology itself, but I think there should be some type of collaboration between the science group, the scientific community, and maybe the government, in a way that the government gives money for people to go on medication, for example. But you are not giving them the money, or you are not providing produce that's cheap for them to eat to prevent them going to the doctor. It's really, I think that's where science needs to work more, to really work to protect the people, those who can't afford it. Instead of having a store where you bring all these produce, and in the end, everything goes to the trash for waste. It makes no sense that there is so much waste, yet there are so many people starving. It makes no sense at all. So what is it for to produce a law? Half of it goes to the waste. That's where I see with technology advancement and how much waste there is. I want to see the purpose.
I mean, you're right, I think too, and the technology we've talked about to like prevent waste doesn't necessarily matter if you're creating a longer shelf life if people don't have access to it anyway. If we can't get to the food, if there's those food deserts, doesn't matter how long your shelf life of your salad is, if you have this whole population that can't ever get it anyway. Yeah.
That was really loud, I'm sorry. So I'm kind of curious, not so much related to the previous conversation, because I do kind of, that's a whole separate topic that I do agree that it's the supermarkets that are setting prices. I figured that out a long time ago. It's a well-kept secret that the general public doesn't seem to understand. But maybe a topic for another day, but I would like to know with the technologies, particularly the technologies that are being developed to kind of address labor shortages or new regulations, water shortages. There were some pretty cool things we heard about over the course of the day today. And I think the hope is that it's going to allow the farming community to continue to produce in states like California, where it's kind of perilous at the moment. But does anyone, what are your thoughts about whether these technologies could actually make farming more efficient, maybe less expensive, more profitable, rather than just trying to hold the line and stay in business? It seemed like there were some pretty cool things, and maybe there's even further things that could be done.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think like that's exactly what we're trying to do. So like kind of linked to your comments, like a lot of things that investors are interested to hear about is how does your technology help reduce the cost of organic food in the supermarket, which you often have to tell them, you should know this, but growers are not setting the price, and if they were, that'd be a great world. It's not. So like there are people holding the margins down, and it's not them. So you know, I wish we were contributing to decrease the cost of organic food, and I'm not sure we are. But what we are doing for sure is like reducing the crop budget. So that's really something we want to strive for. Is, you know, again, as the cost of producing those technologies going down, or building those technologies and making them accessible to as many people as possible, then we are driving costs down. Because today in the vegetable world, we're heavily relying on labor. It's expensive. It's not as efficient as it could be if it was done by a machine. And the history of why we're not relying on machine today in the vegetable world is just an amazing topic, right? It's California and Arizona are responsible for most of the production of these crops. We're very close to the Mexican border. Then big companies like John Deere, Case New Holland have invested a lot of money in mechanizing, further automating the row crop world, because we're talking hundreds of millions of acres in the United States when we're talking about maybe 2 million acres of vegetables, if I'm not including potatoes and stuff like that. So there's been political and corporate choices made in favor of us relying on humans to do a lot of those activities versus using machines. And so the amount of funding that went into building machines for vegetable growers is very little. So that's, I mean, again, another beautiful secret is that a lot of people have no idea that the broccoli that they purchase from the supermarket is harvested by a human. To me, this is incredible. Like, since I've started this job, I've educated countless of people who are in their 30s and have no idea that most of the veggies they buy fresh or frozen are hand harvested or hand clipped or whatever it is. And so, you know, there's a lot of automation, like a lot of improvement, even tiny things. So it doesn't have to be the automation of the entire hand harvesting process, but little by little things, you know. I've seen growers implementing really cool technologies that used to be used within, you know, processing plants around packaging, bagging, that are now being added onto like those harvesters. And so you're seeing things incrementally happening. And I think automation is definitely going to drive the cost down. That's for sure. And I hope it keeps California the #1 ag state in the US, because otherwise we're likely to see acres shifting, and it's already happening to Mexico and other regions of the US. So that is, a tremendous priority, and it should be on the agenda of, states to work on that and make sure that, not only are we preparing the workforce for those jobs, but we're also keeping growers, and not only just enormous corporate firms, but also mid-sized farms and so on.
I'm going to be the virtual participant here, so sorry to interrupt. One great question that came through was, how do you decide, both private or academics, how do you decide where to invest your efforts and why? We were talking about, for example, accidents, Jennifer, you mentioned finger cutting. It's like, how many people are really cutting their finger out there? My problem is like, is that how we decide in developing a piece of technology? That's one. And second, what are we doing as academics, as I mentioned? I mentioned to you, Adi, if you could expand a little bit on what we're doing in the department in terms of creating other majors, for example, or new majors to cater to that future. Now it's a completely different concept now. We need to train our future experts in how to program, how to deal with robots, how to have more mechanized. It's kind of like a double-tiered question. How do we decide where to invest our efforts, and two, what are we currently doing in terms of trying to provide solutions to the industry in this field?
Because I'm carrying the mic, so I may start. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. As far as on the research side, the approach was to actually look at the injuries and the risk factors in about 20 top crops in the state. So that's how we kind of started. That was about 20-something years ago, trying to look at crops that create the most risk to the farm workers, and then start attacking them one by one. And that's, we need to kind of keep updating this, but most of them are still the same. Feed stooping and harvesting and stoop posture is going to be there. But there are some new ones that could be new, either new variety or new way of planting and so on, or like platforms, picking platforms, for example. What are the risks that we didn't see that's happening in the orchard, for example? You're shifting your risk to maybe highly repetitive picking now. Is that a risk to the platform and so on? So, but in general, is the risk and the reported injuries or discomfort at least will dictate what should be done about that. So that's on the research side. Now,
sorry to interrupt. So how, they ask, through surveys? Do we do that through surveys? Who reports these injuries? How are we aware of these injuries, the participants?
there are databases on crops. So we collaborate with insurance companies too. So there's the state insurance registry or the database. So there are ways of looking at which crops are really on top, and then we can attack that. So we've done that before. So we're now collaborating with one of the largest ag insurer, and they can provide us with that information if we need it. And then we're gonna be working on a project in this area actually, in conjunction with the insurance companies to identify the rates, the kind of dynamic rates of injury in agriculture, because that's lagging. If you look only at BLS, it's a very high level industry-wide. It doesn't get down to the crop level. So we're trying to get down to the crop level, and then what type of injuries at the crop level. So that's one area we're just about to start hopefully in the fall. As far as the response from the department, you may have mentioned that we have a new major actually exactly doing what we're trying to do in here to really educate the new technologists basically. So there's a new major in agricultural and environmental technology that our departments just started So we have the new cohort that's gonna start this fall. We didn't advertise, we just got it approved like last minute in a way by the campus. It took a while. Even without doing any zero advertisement, we got 131 applicants, which is a lot. I mean, for a niche area. So we didn't even do anything, and just it was on the website somewhere.
I shouldn't have asked this question, huh?
Yeah. No, I mean it's
Now it's out.
yeah. No, it's okay, but it is a combination of actually the knowing the technology, the introduction about the technologies that people can use, so robotics, automation, and drones and so on. But even the management of these devices. So it's a combination of a management side of things and the technology and how do you combine the two to have a successful farming operation. So hopefully we have good hopes for it, and I think the interest is there. So hopefully we'll respond to the needs of the industry, and eventually we'll have people kind of taking these devices. Like we said, if your devices are now managed by the growers, then they need people to be trained to kind of be able to do it and then know what an app is and then how to control a driverless or autonomous vehicle. So is that what you're looking for?
I believe that answers the question. Thank you.
At least on the company side, if you wanna.
Yeah, I think too, just on the industry side, the way that we typically do that is just through industry organizations, all the companies getting together, talking about worker comp injuries. When I was in that world, I belonged to two different groups, where we would sit and have meetings and talk and share stories and share success stories and how did you tackle this issue and are you seeing, networking, are you seeing this, meat packing glove or meat cutting glove, I thought was a great success story, so I shared it with everyone, like try this, because if we could save some fingers, that's amazing, with a simple fix. So kind of having that dialogue and having that network of other professionals and other companies that do the same thing is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess we're a for-profit company, so we come really from a market needs and we have a lot of conversation with growers. We're trying to understand their challenges, their needs, and we're also coming from kind of a technology background, so kind of trying to find the perfect fit for the technologies, the competencies that we have in-house and the challenges that are brought up by growers. And we do a lot of extensive market studies and crunch some numbers, right? Like it's very important. Like we are asked by the people who pour money into our company to be cash efficient, to show a clear path to market, into revenue, into profitability ourselves. So there's extensive market research that goes into every opportunity we size and look at.
Are we aware of what is the cost of injuries to the produce industry?
I saw something, I know for ATV specific, I know it's $22 billion.
$22 billion?
Yeah, for ATV specifically,
Per
for
year?
in general, general, not for agriculture. This is the number that I know specific for agriculture, not for agriculture, for ATV in general.
ATV accidents?
Yeah, but I don't know about agriculture, because my focus is on ATVs.
Well, back injury is $100 billion in general for all industries. So and agriculture is a subset. So if you think it's number one in agriculture, that means it's a portion of that. Okay, granted, agriculture is not in numbers, it's not the highest, but still, you're going to have a big chunk of the cost coming from the back injuries, I think. So. And that's true almost in every manually physical industry.
So what's David said that I like coffee. Okay, yeah, I do like coffee, and I know a lot about that crop. The whole crop of coffee is $200 billion. That's not the revenue, that's the whole cost. You hit $100 billion just in accidents. So that's huge.
That's total cost, so indirect cost and medical cost, indemnity, everything, so that's why it's so high.
It is not.
I keep doing that, I'm sorry. My voice is really quiet, so I'm just like shocked at this. I wanted to ask, you might have mentioned it in the presentation, but I didn't quite catch it. When you were showing the strawberry harvester where people lay down, can you talk about how much has that been adopted, if at all, in California? Like, are people using it? And if not, why? It's kind of curious about
I've
that.
never seen it.
Yeah, I think there was actually one of the largest strawberry producers, growers. They were very interested in that area, and they were actually developing their own system. But I haven't heard whether they actually implemented it or not. So there's interest, but I think they still haven't been adopted up to a point where you drive down by the farm and you see it. So I think Jennifer agrees with that too.
Yeah, I think the neat thing about it though is like you gotta start somewhere, right? And if that doesn't work, then it might hopefully spark somebody's idea about something that's a little different. And so maybe we're gonna get there. But I think the point about technology becoming more cost efficient and that, yeah, there's things that we didn't have access to 10 years ago will start to hopefully speed up. We're talking about these things. And so it's exciting, thinking about, I mean, I feel like in some ways my mind is stuck. I'm stuck where I'm stuck and I have this vision and I'm just waiting for people to like blow my mind, wide open with their different kind of visions.
Just to follow up, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, just to follow up, this is an anecdotal. We saw actually in Roses, there was a worker who had this same idea. He had a front part made out of bicycles, basic wheels, and had pillows on and a kind of basic canopy and a radio on top, and then he's literally pushing with his feet, trying to roll this kind of makeshift. So they came up with this idea on their own. This is kind of interesting. So said, I'm gonna just sleep on this and then just roll. So, but I don't think it's like a widespread thing. Sorry, but it's an idea that worked, and then it's interesting that the worker came up with it.
He watched the Flintstones.
I'm sorry.
He watched the Flintstones.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is on that point, like, again, back to like, creating products for people out in the field, it's very important that, you start, like, these people are doing this job every day. So they know about, they're the best people to know about the pain points and the challenges of that job. And so, that's part of what we call like product management, I'd say, product strategy. It's really key, right, to have this input and those prototypes tested by the end users of this product, just the same way, some companies who come up with new features on an app will work with focus group to like beta test certain features. It's exactly the same process if you're working with field workers, like we're obviously don't want to build technologies that, just not serving them in the right way.
Now this, the last question reminded me of a question I had earlier for you, Jennifer, and that had to do with your comments about the repetitive many of the workers will do, especially say on those harvest platforms. Some are doing the boxes, some are trimming, whatever. And the comment about then how the repetitive nature of work leads to certain injuries. But the fact that the harvest crews do not want to change their particular task. Mm-hmm. So does that boil down to the fact that they're paid differently? Or what is the reason for that? Because right there, that would seem like a simple solution to reduce some of the injuries would be by rotating those past time bases.
And no, they're not paid differently. Typically, the crews that I've worked with, it's all in commodities, it's a group piece rate. So everyone, like strawberry is very individual, but, the other commodities I'm used to, it's that whole crew is in it together. So it's just a weird, interesting kind of stubborn mindset. I often say we need more, kind of psychologists that, involved in our industry to help us work through some of these issues. Like, why do people get stuck, want only to do this particular task and not switch? I mean, there's certain things, packing is hard. There's this, art to it. I mean, hard in the sense too, that there's just this art to it. Like, I wouldn't be able to do it very well. And, so the people who do that, they do a great job. And oftentimes the packers are winning. It just has worked out that way. So they're not going to really be able to be the loader, right? Lift these boxes. So there's certain things that people just can't do physically. But yeah, if maybe people take on these certain jobs as the loader or the box maker because they really don't want to be stooped over in the field. I'm just kind of talking through sort of my ideas on why I think people might behave this way. But yeah, I don't have we never could figure that out.
So they're being paid as a crew in total.
As a
Therefore, each person is specializing as the most efficient.
Exactly.
And that's, and we go back to the efficiency, right? They as a group then would be less efficient if you have a person who's.
That would be, yeah, the person who's not used to making boxes is gonna be a little slower at it until they get practice.
Yeah.
But maybe they have that hard time figuring out that home book, just like learning to become better at something. But yeah, that's a good point.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just think we oftentimes, overlook those people, and like the skills that they bring to the job, but it's a very technical. I've worked with a lot of crews for like some market research we've done at Farmwise, and I got the opportunity to like spend time, and I mean, it's mind blowing, manipulating the knife, the way the cutters are is just highly technical. And so it is definitely an efficiency thing. Like the more repetition you put into something, you become a master at your music instrument. The repetition is key. So I understand why people don't rotate that often. And then maybe the women packing, because we tend to be maybe more, as much as I am exactly dexterous. So yeah, definitely an efficiency thing. And I don't know if your videos work very well, mine didn't look to work very well, but it goes so fast that, just real. Just the whole process, the rate at which they cut, it's definitely working really fast.
Okay, I'm gonna try not to flash your ears this time. So I wanted to ask a question about moving technologies that have been utilized in packing house situations for some time into the field, and what some of the challenges might be around using those on a platform, harvest machine. I think Jennifer had showed the packages, the plastic bags being heat sealed, and I was really surprised to see that they were using the same device we're using in the lab, which very manual. And I think, Pauline, you mentioned that there were some technologies, I think you were the one who mentioned, somebody mentioned there were some technologies starting to move from more of that had been used in kind of packing house situations moving into the field. But what are some of the challenges that have inhibited that movement? Because obviously all those advances are not currently being used in the field.
Yeah, I'm just mentioning an example that was brought up by a grower I talked to, and it was for them a huge step towards implementing more innovation, but I am definitely not an expert, so I think the mentor.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry, I don't know the answer to that. But I'm thinking about, I was at Cal Poly a couple of years ago and saw this really long piece of equipment sitting outside of an engineering lab. I was like, what is that? And it was a box maker. It was an automated box maker that a shipper had asked Cal Poly to work on this. They did, and then I think the shipper tried it, and they were just like, it's just too cumbersome. If you think about, you see all that equipment I showed in my pictures that are out there. So imagine trying to like, the more stuff you're trying to tack on to that, like your equipment, you guys are talking about making smaller or compact. So, you know, you add on some other kind of line that's gonna seal the bags. That's just another thing you have to drive out with every piece of harvest, harvest equipment. And so when I left the company I worked for and came up with research for, we had 23 crews. So it's 23 machines. You add on another 23 other pieces to try to seal bags or, probably with the making romaine, probably 15, you would need 15 sealers. So it's not like in a processing plant, you have maybe 5 lines. And on a harvest crew, you've got your romaine harvesting crew, you've got 10 crews. So that's 10 individual other things that you're gonna need to make it work. I think that's part of the challenge.
So it's more than logistics.
And it's logistics.
Capital cost of,
Yeah.
and then just,
Yeah, and I'm always was amazed with the truck drivers that pack up all those machines at the end of the day, load them onto a rig and move them. It's just so much. It's the visibility hard. I just would always worry about those guys, and they're doing that at night too. So imagine just that creating, you need another truck, another driver, another rig, to pull this other pieces of equipment and get them moved. So it's not just like the one piece of equipment, it comes with then more people than to also move all of that. Yeah,
do you think if they started from scratch, heaven forbid, the cost of that, but if they started from scratch and built a brand new machine, did they build it differently?
Yeah, I would love to see that. Yeah, something compact that kind of had everything on it. That if you could get rid of some of those jobs, like some of those where you didn't need that much like space because you needed 20 people, harvesting with knives. But if you could condense that and then add on other things that make those jobs easier, that would be very cool.
How you are seeing the tendency, but this question is not related to mechanization directly, but packing houses. Normally here in the state, things, robots pack more like the field versus packing, right? So how you are seeing that in terms of safety, mechanization, how are growers now trying to invest in packing houses, according to your experience here?
No, we had talked about that in my previous jobs, talked about maybe labor's tight, would it be better to kind of go back to the old way of just a quick harvest in the field and get everything to pack and house to pack. But still, I haven't seen anyone make that transition.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still a lot of field pack. If you think about, we still have a lot of what we call just carton commodities, stuff's just going into a carton. I don't know, logistically dragging it all back to a facility to try to put it in cartons and then ship it out. Our industry is amazing because that stuff that is packed in the field goes straight to a cooler and then shipped out that night.
But that's
It's amazing how fast.
unnecessary because the type of time, short,
Yeah.
you need to have that.
Yeah, I just need the classification.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you don't need sorters and all of that.
I'm supposed to repeat it here on the microphone, but just the simplicity of, I don't think vegetables are simple, but in terms of a harvest, you're looking for a uniform stage that's going to be packed. There's a little bit of variation, but it's much simpler than with fruits where you have size classification, maybe even firmness classification, but color. And so therefore that's much more complicated. Whereas with vegetables, the system we actually have of packing in the field is very efficient. Leave the waste in the field. In other words, it's really quite efficient.
And I suppose that goes back to genetics, right? That we do have this crop that it's all the same size relatively. You know,
Like cable breaks between Chile and.
You know, like, table grapes, Chile, a lot more, shed pack than, field pack here in the States.
Like, but also the country was very another thing. Because normally was very demanding in terms of protocols and safety, you know, to all the countries. You know, but here, we pack the field. We pack the field. Sorry. Let's take the panels back. You can be panels.
This is a great panel.
Yeah, it's a good topic right now because when the US is very demanding in other countries, Chile, Peru, that normally use packing houses, when we have more control of this cold change and also safety. But first with the state, we package here. But I am hearing that the tendency changing. Some growers are here building packing houses in the Central Valley. At least for certain program, for example, when they need to pack top seal or clamshell, they're doing the labor and packing houses, you know, so, or repack, yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, sorry, Mike, Farzaneh, you mentioned, that when, you know, you attend meetings or folks talking about improving, you know, on what they do, improving production, efficiency, and those sorts of things, and not really talking a lot about improving worker safety. Do you think that has some, I mean, that producers might look at that as, you know, regulatory agency responsibility? They don't see that they've got their hands full, you know, just trying to conform to the regulations. And so that they figure, well, similar happens sometimes in food safety, where they figure, well, FDA will tell us what we need to do. We don't need to add anything to that. And is something similar going on with growers and worker safety?
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way that, you know, for example, if there were no travel show and there were no, you know, workers' comp and, you know, any kind of, you know, expenses associated with that, they would not, you know, follow up with that stuff. Because, you know, I think, you know, especially with the farmers, they have a lot of stuff to take care of that. Especially, you know, with the fruits and with the quality of the crop, the quality and quantity of the crop. And, you know, what I saw in these years, if there were not, you know, the government pressure on them regarding the farm workers, they even, you know, put less effort in this regard. But, yeah.
See the growers that break that mold that, you know, are progressive, the growers that are progressive in that respect, and are being proactive and taking, you know, a step beyond what they're obligated to do the regulations. And if there's anybody out there like that, I mean, how can you account for that change in attitude? Just a mindset of corporate culture kind of thing, or is there some way to incentivize, you know, folks looking at things differently?
It's like, you know, there are different, you know, we cannot say that all of the partners are in this direction, that they take care of, you know, their crops more than the farm workers. There are definitely, you know, some of them that, you know, put more effort to, you know, provide, you know, more, you know, provide more attention to, you know, have more attention for the farm workers, definitely. But, I don't know what would be the best, you know, incentives for, you know, farm workers, for farmers to, you know, improve their, you know, their freedom to use, to improve their attention to the farm workers. I don't know if the rest of you have.
Yeah, I'm just, I mean, it's been alluded to today, to just all of the different things that a farmer has to deal with. And in my mind, I've got some different categories. You've got the farmer
there's growing the crop, and then it is the veg world I'm used to, then you have a harvest fruit, it's totally separate. That's a separate company, separate management. And so it really goes down to, and I'm sure like all of you are very well, whatever culture, you know, first of all, you've got your company culture, whatever that culture is, and that varies. Different growers, different harvesters, different shippers have these different cultural feels to them. But the other challenge is too on the harvesting side is when you have all these different crews, then you have the foremen. So you might have the owner or your upper management of the harvesting company. Then you've got your supervisors who maybe oversee like very, you know, like the broad, you know, commodity department. But then you've got your individual foremen who are running each crew. And also all of those people are different too. So trying to get everybody in line with the same culture, same mentality about everything that needs done, the quality, the food safety, the production, the safety of the harvesting crew, to get all of them in line, working the same is so challenging because they're all coming with their own perceptions, their own different education levels. And one of the things I had learned helping hire our harvesting crews every year was that there's so many people that came to us to work that never attended school at all. You know, it's something we just take so for granted here in the United States that people have like some, you know, free education, whether it's good or not, you know, but to at least a high school level, they want to stay. But we work with so many people who never had that opportunity to go to school at all. So then they're coming with a different idea and a different, you know, way that they learn. So it's interesting dealing with adult people who are, you know, adult learners who have these different levels of education. And some people maybe had a third grade education. Some of our supervisors had a sixth grade education. It's a really different world that I think people don't realize unless they work in it. So then trying to communicate like how to keep everybody safe all the way down that chain is like a constant challenge. You know, even with my glove solution that really did help people and they saw that it helped. So oftentimes we would still have a cut and I said, do they have their glove on? No. You know, and then I'd be like, well, you as the foreman, it should be your responsibility. Make sure these guys have their glove on. Why is that so hard? Well, because they do have all these other challenges and all these other things they got to really pay attention to and get started in the morning. And, you know, they can't keep track, you know, it's just a lot. It's just a lot for everybody to manage. So I think sometimes it looks like maybe growers don't care, but it's not that. It's just that there's just so much, there's so many moving parts, so many demands, so many different types of people and skills.
I mean, it seems like there are some companies that just set themselves apart as being superior in so many ways, and there are some that are just superior in the way they take care of employees and pay attention to worker safety, and there's others that are at the other end of the spectrum.
Well,
You know,
culture is like
and-
first and foremost.
Yes.
No, and I don't think it's bad because it's complicated. I think, you know, from what I've seen, it's starts at the top, right? I mean, they always, not to cliche anymore, you know, but that does set the tone. You know, you make it a priority and you force it, you know, and that's what your company becomes. If, you know, you leave it, you delegate that and leadership doesn't, you know, take responsibility for that, then it does become complicated.
Yeah, some groups are much better, higher priority on it than others, sure.
I have a question. So, who drives the standardization of the hardest equipment? So like the trailers that go through the field, let's use cauliflower as a good example, right? So who drives the standardization of that? The reason why I ask that is because I've been on lots of cauliflower harvesters and they're all a little different, right? So cauliflower gets bruised very easily if you throw it upside down and it hits the platform upside down. So some use like pads, some use bubble wrap, some use nothing because they don't want to clean it every day or they don't want to change it out every day. So who drives that? And on that, we had one, I work mostly in Imperial Valley for veg, Imperial Valley and Yuma. So we had a situation this year where organic field pushed open the jackets and it was really windy the next day. And so when they went to harvest the day after, all the cauliflower heads had a ton of dust on them, just absolutely covered in dust. And so they have the sprayers on the trailer, but then it turned into mud. And so it became this huge problem where we basically had to walk away from the field, which is a huge shame, right? So if we had like an air compressor or, as another option, who drives those types of changes?
That, I mean, that would be, to me, that's the shipper and harvest company working together to figure out what's the right way to pack for the customers. Yeah, because it seems like, but all that equipment is relatively similar, but then it's all has little tweaks and it's a little different. Yeah, I don't understand standardization.
That's
It's
why
like,
we have
it's
the
like
change.
injustice.
Yeah, I think there's so many companies just doing their own thing.
Like, for agricultural machinery, as long as I know, there are standards developed in ASA, ISO. I'm not sure if you are talking about this kind of standards, but
Necessarily standards for human safety, but just like actual
Design.
trailers.
Design,
that-
yeah.
Yeah, the design.
so long as they
Yeah.
meet their basic requirements to make it have a wing that's got,
Their harvest wing could have a belt, that's what I'm used to, or if you're seeing pads, like, I think there's the basic requirements and like the trailer, basic DMV requirements, if it's with the flatbed that needs to be on the road, but even those flatbeds could be a little bit different in terms of where they've got these railings to either hold material or not. I mean, we had a really bad accident with one of those big railings that came down on someone, but that's not every one of our trailers had that. Only, and it was for like, either coal or rock. It was because the way the machine was set up. Yeah.
I do think it comes down to growers love customizing equipment, and we see that in everywhere. I think tweaking a simple standard platform is what you'll see, and I think that's very much the film harvester. But in the other machine world, in general, in the machine learning world, that's what you see. It's like it's really driven by growers' preferences and stuff like that. So like, who's driving the standard? Probably like their sales team who tells them they need to like ship that many cartons every day. But yeah, that's kind of like the culture. It's like they want to own their machine in a way and like, be the ultimate and like innovator around the machine.
We talk about 3 minutes left. If there is any last question, we can go for that one. Or we can, ask for the panelists if you have any last thought or anything.
I have one thing. Pauline, you mentioned tractors. I just wanted you to add a little bit to that. The tractor was successful because it was almost like a plug and play. I can do many things with the tractor. And that doesn't seem to be the case with, automation. Like you say, growers tend to build their own, even, they're like doing. So you used that analogy, and I was just curious if that's where the industry is going at a practical level. You mentioned that you're eliminating the autonomous vehicles and now attaching it to a tractor, for example. So is that the next big solution, or what do you think of it?
Okay, so first of all of this is driven by customer needs today. And so if we speak about the vegetable space, I think the need today is really in automating manual processes or manual activities. And so, repurposing or putting this workforce into more complex manual stuff that are harder to automate in like a snap, like harvesting. And so that drives, I'd say, our decision to focus mostly on that versus autonomy of driving. Now, do I believe that every tractor will be autonomous? I think we'll get there. And John Deere released this year an autonomous tractor for tillage in row crops. So they're automating, the communication between the tractor and that implements. And so you're a farmer, you can be in your truck taking a little nap, and then you have an alert system. If the system detects within 100 feet there is a human, the system will shut down, and you have to come to the tractor to physically, start it again. If it's, a piece of whatever, let's say pipe, you can just authorize the restart of the machine from the tablet, from your truck. So all of this stuff, is this the right move? Should they have done that? On tillage, we can debate, but I do think, we're seeing already like large OEMs, and John Deere owns the market in a lot of areas, pushing for like autonomy. And I think automating the navigation on farmland is arguably an easier challenge than automating the navigation of your car on the highway or within Davis, because so many things can happen. A biker, a pedestrian, someone, whatever. Exactly. Farmland is different to Jen's points, we have an irrigation crew, millions of feet away from us when we're weeding, but, there are a lot of operations that are, it's a field per day and then nothing else happens. So I think, we're moving towards more autonomy of navigation. But in our case, so again, to conclude on that, we're dropping the power unit because I think it was really useful for us to control the whole loop and have both, control over this tractor because we designed it ourselves, and then the implement, the attachment at the back. But now, as we move forward, we're realizing that, it needs to be a plug-and-play solution that growers can easily adopt, and they can train their own people who may not have an engineering degree, operate the equipment using a monitor in the cab that gives them, they don't have to turn their back constantly towards the equipment, and they are supported by a remote team if needed. But you want to move towards simplicity, yet keeping some of the sophistication, that capacity to weed intra-row needs to stay there, obviously. That capacity to switch from a 2-line broccoli to a 6-line romaine needs to stay there. But ease of operation, reliability, again, one of the challenge, obviously, to bring technologies from processing plant into the field is those harvesters, they cannot break down. They're simple today because also they need to be working, whatever it is, 12 hours a day and deliver on, the throughput that we're expecting them to provide. And so our robot is great, it's beautiful. It's just the third iteration of ever building a weeding robot. And so there's so much more refinement that needs to go into that, and that pushes us to simplify the engineering design and the decision that we make so we can provide the reliability that people expect. Think again back to educating the public. These growers plant, for every week, hundreds of acres. So there's weeding needs all the time, sometimes more than others, but we can't afford to be down for several days. The machine needs to be working, so it needs to be really robust and rugged. And I think some of the technologies that we're leveraging are not used to work in those dusty, windy, extremely hot environments. So refining those subsystems and making them bulletproof and battle-proven to work out in the field is a challenge, and that is definitely nurturing the decision to drop the autonomy part. Now, will we build technology to automate the truck, the driving, or make the driving the tractor easier, more automated for the tractor driver? Hell yeah, definitely. Last week, I was driving with a tractor driver who was running a fertilizer applicator for corn, and then a guy who was spraying herbicide on corn. They use Exact Apply technology from John Deere. They're, it's auto steering, so it's much more relaxed than when I saw my dad running a fertilizer applicator in the 2000s, right 20 years ahead. We have young folks who are on their phone driving the tractor. It's much more comfortable and cozy than it used to be. So we're definitely want to be part of that journey to make working conditions better for those people.
Thank you. Any final remarks from other panelists? I wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of you. Most importantly, your passion. That's one thing that I told you, Jennifer, when we met, that you were very passionate for laborers, and I'm very grateful for that, and all of you. So thank you, Farzaneh, too, for moderating this session. I have a couple of quick announcements before we head out. First is we do have in the box folder for the participants for today, we have how do we call it? There you go, yeah, an evaluation. We will have an evaluation in a per day basis. So if you could fill in the evaluation today, that would be very helpful for us to improve this in the future offerings. And there'll be another evaluation tomorrow and another one for Wednesday. And that's one. The other is I want to personally invite participants, panelists to come and join us in other sessions too. I don't see many other participants for other sessions here, but you can set up the tone and visit us tomorrow and Wednesday too, please. That's one. And with that, I would like to invite all of you, attendees and participants, after tomorrow after 5. Today you can go home, go do your thing. Tomorrow after 5, if you want to stay a little bit longer, we as the Post-Harvest Technology Center would like to go probably across the street over there in the Hyatt and invite you for a drink, some socially, and we could talk a little bit more about these technologies, learn more about each other, and hopefully, continue this conversation so we have it right now. I'm not forgetting anything. I want to thank all of you, and please, once again, join me in thanking our panelists. They were great today. Thanks a lot.